The November rain turned London gray, its drizzle sliding down the glass walls of the Carrington estate like restless ghosts. Inside the grand mansion in Hampstead, everything gleamed. The marble floors, the chandeliers, even the silence. Silence was what Michael Carrington, one of Britain's youngest billionaires, had grown accustomed to. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that filled a house too big for one man and his 7-year-old son. Ethan sat by the window, small hands pressing against the glass, eyes fixed on nothing and everything at once. He didn't speak. He hadn't spoken in years. Doctors called it autism. Therapists called it trauma. Michael called it his punishment. Because the day his wife, Claire, died in that car crash, Ethan had stopped speaking altogether. Every morning, nannies came and went like houseplants being replaced, bright smiles fading by the week. None lasted long. Ethan would scream when touched, cry when routines changed, and hide under tables when voices grew sharp. Michael had the money, but not the patience. He watched his son like he watched his investments, from a distance. That morning, another nanny quit. "I can't do this anymore, sir," she stammered, gathering her coat. "He won't eat, won't sleep, won't even look at me." Michael just nodded, his jaw tightening. He offered double pay. She refused. Even money couldn't buy peace here. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Green, the housekeeper, entered his office with a file. "Sir, this is the last one the agency sent," she said. "Her name's Amara. Single mother. Good references, but..." Michael didn't look up. "But she's different." Mrs. Green hesitated. "Some of the staff might not. I don't care what she looks like. If she lasts more than a week, she's hired." By evening, the rain had turned to fog. A modest black cab pulled up at the gate. Amara stepped out, mid-30s, skin the shade of polished mahogany, her coat worn but neat. Her eyes carried quiet warmth, the kind that wasn't forced. She walked up to the door, clutching a folder in one hand, a small carved wooden elephant in the other. Michael barely glanced up when she entered. "You've read the terms?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "You understand the boy's condition?" "I do," she said softly. "I understand children who stop speaking." There was something in her tone, not pity, but memory. Michael noticed it, but didn't ask. When Amara met Ethan for the first time, the boy was lining toy cars in perfect rows across the rug. He didn't turn when she entered. She knelt down quietly, placed the small elephant beside the cars, and said, "This one's from Ghana. He's traveled far to join your fleet." Ethan's fingers froze. He didn't look at her, but he didn't push the toy away either. From the doorway, Michael watched, a flicker of interest in his cold eyes. "If you can get him to eat dinner, you'll have done better than the last 4, he said. That night, the house smelled faintly of stew. Ethan sat, still and silent. Amara didn't coax or command. She simply began to hum, soft, low, a lullaby that sounded older than the walls. After a while, Ethan's spoon lifted clumsily. He ate 3 bites before setting it down again to eye in the quiet kitchen. Michael's hand tightened around his glass of water. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel empty, just quiet. A different kind of quiet. Upstairs, as Amara tucked Ethan's blanket, she whispered to herself, "We'll try again tomorrow, little one. We always do." And somewhere deep inside that silence, a story began to change. By the 3rd week, the Carrington estate had begun to feel less like a mausoleum and more like a home. Ethan no longer screamed when the clock chimed. He followed Amara around the kitchen, sometimes holding the edge of her apron. He didn't speak, but his eyes started to search, for faces, for sounds, for something beyond routine. Michael, however, stayed distant. He'd watch them from the doorway, phone in hand, pretending not to care. But late at night, when he reviewed company emails, he'd pause at the sound of Ethan's muffled laughter downstairs. It was the first laughter in that house since Claire's funeral. One morning, during breakfast, Amara found Ethan arranging sugar cubes by size. "Perfect order," she said. "But what if we made a tower instead?" She stacked 1, then 2. Ethan watched her hand carefully, then placed the 3rd himself. The tower fell. For a second, she feared he'd scream, but instead, he laughed. A soft, short laugh that made Michael freeze mid-step at the doorway. "He laughed," Michael whispered. Amara smiled, but said nothing. Later that week, Trouble arrived dressed in a suit. Richard Hale, Michael's longtime business partner, came for lunch. A loud man who mistook arrogance for charm. So this is the miracle nanny, eh? Richard said, glancing at Amara. Heard you finally got the boy under control. Amara stiffened. He's not under control. He's learning to trust. Richard smirked. Same thing, isn't it? You have to manage them like assets. Michael's jaw tightened. He didn't defend her. He just poured more wine. During lunch, Ethan sat silently, clutching his carved elephant. Richard reached over. Cute toy that. Must have cost a fortune. Amara intervened quietly. It's his comfort. Please don't. But Richard snatched it, laughing. You can't spoil him forever, Mike. He's not going to grow out of this if, before anyone could blink, Ethan screamed. A piercing, guttural cry that made the chandelier tremble. He kicked the table, sending plates crashing. The elephant fell to the floor. Richard stumbled back, furious. You see what I mean? Out of control. Michael froze. He saw his son trembling, eyes wide with terror. The same fear he saw the night of Claire's crash. But before he could react, Amara knelt beside Ethan, gathering him close, humming that same ancient tune. Slowly, the shaking stopped. Ethan pressed his forehead to her shoulder, whispering faint sounds no one understood. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. Richard muttered something under his breath and left. Michael stood there, shame burning behind his eyes. I'm sorry, he finally said. He didn't mean. Amara looked up, calm but firm. He's not the one who should apologize. That night, for the first time, Michael couldn't sleep. He wandered into Ethan's room and found the boy asleep, his tiny hand still gripping the wooden elephant. On the nightstand was a photo of Claire, the same gentle eyes Ethan had. Michael sat down beside the bed, guilt and grief twisting inside him. I don't know how to reach you, he whispered. Or him. The next morning, Michael asked Amara to join him for tea. I owe you more than I can say, he began awkwardly. I also owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything, she said. Just listen to him, even when he's silent. Her words sank deeper than he expected. Over the next days, Michael began trying small things. Sitting with Ethan during breakfast. Walking him to the garden. Once, when a therapist came by, he stayed through the entire session instead of escaping to his office. Weeks passed. The bond grew between all three of them. But Amara carried her own secret. In the quiet of her room, she'd unfold a worn photograph of a boy, her son, Samuel. He'd been autistic too. Gone 2 years now, after a fever that came too suddenly to fight. It was the reason she'd taken this job. The reason she could understand Ethan's silence like a second language. Then came the storm. It was past midnight when thunder cracked across London. Lightning flooded Ethan's room. He screamed, louder than ever before. Michael rushed in, panicked. What do I do? He shouted over the noise. Amara ran to Ethan, wrapped him in her arms, humming through the thunder. You're safe, she whispered. It's just the sky talking. Michael watched helplessly. For a moment, Ethan's cries softened. His hand reached for her face, trembling. His lips moved, one sound, quiet but clear. Ma. Amara froze. Tears blurred her vision. Michael's breath caught. Did he? Ethan repeated, a little louder. Ma. The thunder rolled again, but none of them heard it. Morning came slowly, soft and gold after the storm. The city was washed clean. Downstairs, the smell of toast drifted through the air. Ethan was already awake, humming quietly as he lined up his cars. Amara watched him from the doorway, still shaken. She hadn't told Michael yet that Ma wasn't just a word. It was her son's name for her too. Michael entered, his steps hesitant. He said it, didn't he? Amara nodded, smiling through tears. Yes, he found his word. Michael's throat tightened. You did what no one else could. She shook her head. He did what he needed to. I just reminded him it was safe. Days later, Michael hosted a small gathering at the estate, his first since Claire's death. Staff and therapists gathered. Richard, awkward and red-faced, arrived too, muttering half-hearted congratulations. But the star of the day was Ethan, who for the first time in years, didn't hide behind anyone. He clutched his wooden elephant, then slowly walked up to Amara and tugged her sleeve. Ma, he whispered again. Everyone went silent. Amara knelt, eyes glistening. Yes, my love. Ethan handed her a small toy car, one of his favorites. For you, he said. The room broke into quiet tears. Even Michael turned away, unable to hide the emotion in his eyes. After a long pause, he said softly, You're part of this family now, Amara. Weeks passed. The mansion changed. The walls, once echoing with silence, now carried laughter, music, and sometimes quiet humming. Ethan began attending therapy more willingly. Michael donated a portion of his company profits to a children's autism center, naming it Samuel House. Amara didn't ask how he knew her son's name. She just smiled. On a crisp spring morning, Amara and Ethan stood by the garden pond, feeding the ducks. "Do you miss your boy?" Ethan asked suddenly, surprising her. Her heart caught. "Every day," she whispered. "I think he talks to the stars," Ethan said. "When it rains, they listen." She smiled. "Yes, darling, they do." From the terrace, Michael watched. No phone, no briefcase, just quiet gratitude. The woman he once hired to control chaos had taught him something wealth never could: how to sit in silence and listen. As the sun dipped over London, Ethan ran ahead, laughing. Amara looked up at the sky, streaked with soft gold, and felt peace for the first time in years. Not because her grief was gone, but because love had found a new voice. That moral true healing begins not when we teach someone to speak, but when we finally learn to listen.